Everyone in my family thought I was just the quiet one, the sister who worked at some dusty antique shop, barely getting by. But on Thanksgiving, all of that changed when my laptop screen lit up with the truth I'd kept hidden for years. I had built a $12 million empire in silence. And when my sister exposed it in front of everyone, the chaos that followed was something none of us saw coming. My name is Emily. I'm 38 years old, and for the sake of privacy, I've changed a few details, but this story is real. I grew up in a family where I wasn't the favorite or even the second favorite. I was the invisible one, the daughter who clapped for herself because no one else did. Everything changed the year I turned 8. My sister Lauren was born prematurely, and from that moment on, the world shifted. Lauren became the center of our universe. My parents, especially my mom, revolved around her every cough, fever, and doctor's visit like the fate of the world depended on it. At first, I didn't get it. I thought things would go back to normal. But the silence I felt around me just kept growing. My mom became obsessed with germs. Our house turned into a sanitized lab with hand sanitizer in every room and the smell of bleach soaking into the walls. Anytime I got a sniffle, I was sent away to Grandma Janet's or Aunt Valerie's. I used to enjoy it at first. Grandma made cookies and Aunt Valerie had a collection of Nancy Drew books I loved. But eventually I understood. I wasn't being treated, I was being removed. I wasn't safe to be around Lauren. I was a threat not to her health, but to the image of control my mom clung to. I tried everything to get their attention. I got straight A's, won science fairs, even taught myself how to play piano. But none of it mattered if Lauren had so much as a headache. One night I performed a piano solo I'd practiced for months, no one came. 2 weeks later, everyone showed up to hear Lauren play a squeaky version of Hot Cross Buns on a plastic flute. That was the moment it really sunk in. So I stopped trying. I retreated into myself and found comfort in books, in old jewelry, in the antique catalogs Grandma Janet kept in her attic. She was the only one who saw me, really saw me. She let me organize her vintage jewelry collection, taught me what made certain pieces valuable. While my parents obsessed over Lauren's sniffles, Grandma helped me find beauty in the past. At some point, the favoritism turned into family mythology. Emily's so independent. Emily understands. Lauren needs more help. They talked like I was some kind of adult therapist trapped in a child's body. What they never realized is I wasn't okay, I was hurting, but I learned early on that no one was coming to save me, so I started saving myself. By the time I hit high school, I had a plan. I worked part-time at a local diner, joined every club, and treated school like my way out. I aced the SAT, got a perfect 1,600. When I told my mom, she didn't even look up from helping Lauren with her homework. "That's nice, honey," she said, "but could you keep it down? Lauren has a big test tomorrow." College applications, I did them on my own. Essays, financial aid, recommendations, no one asked to see a thing. I got a full ride scholarship to the University of Michigan. When I told my parents over dinner, they asked if Lauren could have my bedroom while I was away so she could film her TikToks in peace. College was my salvation. I majored in art history and focused on vintage jewelry. I took every class I could, studied harder than ever, and graduated summa cum laude. No one came to the ceremony, no call, no card, but I wasn't surprised anymore. I landed a job at a prestigious auction house in Detroit. I started at the bottom, cataloging pieces from estate sales. But one day, I found something others missed, a small brooch they labeled as costume jewelry. I stayed after hours to research it, and sure enough, it was an original from the 1920s, worth nearly $50,000. It sold quickly and changed everything. Suddenly, people were listening to me. I became known for my ability to spot hidden gems. I memorized hallmarks, authentication methods, and industry secrets. I saved every dime, kept my life simple, and after a few years, I opened my own authentication business. I worked with private collectors, galleries, even other auction houses. My firm expanded fast, first to Chicago, then to New York. But back home, my family still thought I worked at a dusty antique store. Mom would tell people Emily works with old jewelry or something. Lauren mocked my job at family dinners while bragging about her assistant marketing role. Meanwhile, the Coach purse on Mom's shoulder was probably paid for with the money I wired to their account every month. Yes, I sent them money, quietly, $5,000 every month. I couldn't stand the thought of them losing their house. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me doing what I wish someone had done for me. I didn't expect thanks and I never got any. Then came Thanksgiving. Mom said she was too tired to cook, overwhelmed. I told her I'd handle it, no problem. I hired a high-end caterer, the same one I use for business events. Everything was perfect. The turkey was flawless, the sides were gourmet, and the wine was worth more than they imagined. I even brought my laptop to monitor an important international auction I was managing that day. That's when Lauren barged into my old bedroom, no knock, just like always. She saw my laptop open. On the screen were financial reports, account balances, and pending contracts. She stared frozen, then smiled, and walked into the dining room holding the laptop. "Hey, everyone," she said, loud enough to silence the room. "Want to see what Emily's really been up to?" I barely made it in before the silence dropped like a stone. There it was, my net worth, $12.4 million. My pending contracts, my authentication agreements, my quarterly profit report. Everything laid bare in front of my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them. Lauren looked like she'd seen a ghost. "She's rich," she whispered, and just like that, everything I'd kept hidden for years shattered in the middle of a Thanksgiving feast. The silence in the dining room lasted longer than any pause I'd ever known. It wasn't just shock, it was calculation. My mother stared at the laptop screen like it had betrayed her personally. My father clenched his fork so tightly his knuckles went white. Then Mom gave a sharp laugh, the kind that sounds more like a threat than amusement. "Emily works at a little antique shop," she said, her voice high and defensive. "There's no way this is real." She looked at me, daring me to deny it. "I own that business," I said flatly, turning the screen toward them again. 3 offices, hundreds of private clients, multi-million-dollar contracts every quarter. Lauren's face twisted into something between horror and envy. "You've been lying to us," she hissed. "You watched us struggle while sitting on all that money." Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. "No one asked," I shot back, my tone colder than I expected. "You all assumed I was a failure. You never wanted to know the truth. You liked the story where Lauren was the star and I was the quiet antique nerd." Dad slammed his fork down onto his plate. "You let us suffer," he barked. "Your sister has student loans. Your mother's back is a mess. And we've been drowning in bills." He stood, eyes wild with accusation. "I've been sending you money," I said, keeping my voice calm while the room swirled with chaos. $5,000 a month. Every month. Quietly. That stopped them. Even Lauren blinked in confusion. "You've been sending money," she asked. "To them?" I nodded. "For years. To help with the house, the bills, everything." My mother's expression shifted from outrage to something more dangerous, entitlement. "That was kind of you," she said, "but there was venom beneath the sweetness. But now it's time to do more. You have millions. Your sister deserves a share." I stared at her, my heart suddenly heavy with the full weight of what this meant. "She deserves a share of something she didn't build," I asked. "For what, being cruel to me in nicer clothes?" The words tasted bitter on my tongue. Lauren scoffed and flipped her hair. "I helped you," she snapped. "Remember when I told you to sell jewelry on Etsy?" She said it like she'd invented my success. "You laughed at me," I replied. "You told people I was a joke. You mocked my job in front of your friends. That's not support, Lauren." My father cleared his throat and stepped closer. "We're your family," he said, voice trembling like he thought that still meant something. "That money is our future too." His words landed like an attempted guilt trip, but I didn't buy the ticket. "I built this alone," I said, each word firm and final. "Every dollar, every hour, every sacrifice was mine." "You wouldn't have done it without us," Mom said sharply. "We raised you. You owe us everything." Her voice cracked as if she was shocked I didn't already agree. I had to laugh. "You raised me by shipping me off whenever I sneezed. You missed my graduations, my recitals, my awards. The only thing I owe you for is showing me what not to be." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Lauren's face was red with fury. "You're just jealous because I'm the favorite," she snapped. "That's why you hid all this, to punish us." Her voice was shrill with panic now. "No," I said quietly but firmly. "I hid it because I knew this would happen. Because I knew the second you found out you'd want to take it from me. And you just proved me right." My mother's hands were shaking now. "We're meeting with a financial advisor," she announced suddenly. "We'll help you set up trusts for the family." As if it were a done deal. As if I didn't have a say. I picked up my bag and my laptop. "There won't be any trusts," I said. "There won't be any more checks. This is over." I walked out the room, behind me dissolving into stunned, done silence. Outside, the cold air was bracing. I stood on the porch, breathing hard, the wind cutting through my sweater like truth through a lie. My phone buzzed in my pocket, texts already pouring in. I ignored them. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. By the time I got home, there were over 50 missed messages. Some begging, some accusing, some pretending none of it happened. Rachel had already posted a passive-aggressive Facebook status, something about family betrayal and hoarded wealth. It didn't stop the next day, or the day after. The calls came nonstop from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Even Aunt Marianne chimed in to say family shares blessings. I called my lawyer and canceled the automatic payments to my parents' account. Then I changed my phone number. I emailed my assistant and had her block every unknown caller. I was done. But they weren't. They showed up at my office 3 days later, my mother, my father, and Lauren, all dressed like they were headed to a business meeting, fake smiles plastered on their faces. My assistant Jenny texted me from the lobby. "Your family's here," she wrote. "They're asking for a financial meeting." I nearly laughed. I walked out and met them in the hallway. "You need to leave," I said, my tone flat. "This is my place of work. You're not welcome here." Lauren looked like she wanted to cry again. Mom reached for my arm. "We just want to talk," she said, fake tears brimming. "Let's be reasonable." Her voice oozed guilt like it was her weapon of choice. "You had 30 years to be reasonable," I replied. "This isn't a conversation. This is harassment." I looked at Jenny. "Call security." That's when my mother snapped. "You ungrateful brat," she shouted. "After all we did for you, this is how you repay us." Her voice echoed down the hall, sharp and desperate. The security guard arrived and gently escorted them out. Lauren turned back at the last second. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You need us." But even she didn't believe it. Back in my office, I shut the door and sat down slowly. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was release. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was choosing peace. I called my lawyer again. This time I asked her to send a formal cease and desist. I wasn't going to live with one foot in the past anymore. The lines had been drawn, and this time I was protecting myself first. The cease and desist letter went out by certified mail the next morning. My lawyer drafted it carefully, outlining the harassment, the financial boundary, and my firm intent to press charges if it continued. I expected silence or maybe more threats. What I didn't expect was for it to go viral. 3 days later, Lauren posted a dramatic video on Instagram. She was fake crying in her car, talking about betrayal, injustice, and how money changes people. Her eyes were dry, her mascara flawless, and she name-dropped me just enough to send her followers running to my page. Overnight, my business's private account was flooded with messages, some supportive, many furious. Apparently, Lauren's version of the story was that I hoarded wealth while my family drowned in debt. She called me emotionally abusive for not paying off her student loans. In her words, my sister would rather swim in diamonds than help the people who raised her. The comments were wild, full of hashtags like family betrayal and Greta Shigli. It would have been laughable if it didn't sting. Strangers called me selfish and heartless. One person even emailed my assistant demanding to know how I slept at night, knowing her sister was suffering. I didn't respond, but Jenny did with a well-worded note and a copy of the cease and desist. Then came the bombshell. A journalist from a mid-size outlet reached out for a feel-good redemption story. He wanted to know if I'd be interested in sharing my journey from invisible daughter to millionaire mogul. I almost deleted the message, but something about it made me pause. I wasn't sure why I kept rereading his email. Maybe because for once someone wanted to hear my side. Not as the failed daughter or the weird antique girl, but as the woman who built something no one believed she could. After a few days, I wrote back. We met in a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with real espresso and quiet booths. I brought printouts, timelines, even financial records. If I was going to tell my story, I'd do it thoroughly like everything else in my life. He listened, took notes, asked thoughtful questions. He didn't twist my words. He didn't try to make me the villain or the martyr. He just told the truth about a girl who grew up overlooked, learned to survive alone, and became powerful without applause. When the article dropped, it was titled "The Antique Expert Who Built an Empire in Silence." It spread faster than I expected. Jewelry blogs picked it up. A few business sites reshared it. Even a women's magazine reached out about a possible feature. And just like that, the narrative shifted. People started seeing me, not the version my family painted, but the real one. I got emails from other invisible daughters thanking me for speaking up. Some said they cried reading the article. Others said they forwarded it to their own mothers with no explanation. That night, my phone rang. It was Grandma Janet. She hadn't been at Thanksgiving, and for a while, I wasn't sure she even knew what happened. Her voice was calm, gentle, and stronger than I remembered. "Emily," she said, "you have nothing to apologize for." I blinked hard, trying not to cry. "I always knew you were special," she continued, "but I didn't know you were brave too." Her words settled over me like a soft blanket. We talked for over an hour. She asked about my work, my clients, my favorite pieces. We laughed about how I used to arrange her jewelry by color and decade. For the first time in years, I felt like a granddaughter again. Meanwhile, my parents were quiet, too quiet, no more emails, no more calls. Until one afternoon, a certified letter arrived at my office. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a formal request. My parents were seeking a family mediation. They wanted to discuss fair redistribution of my wealth. According to the letter, they believed I owed them long-term financial support. I read the words 3 times before I started laughing. Out loud, right there in my office. Jenny peeked her head in and asked if I was okay. I'm great, I said, and I meant it. Because they still didn't get it. This wasn't about money. It never was. They weren't angry that I had millions. They were angry they couldn't control it. They were furious that I'd escaped the role they assigned me, the silent one, the giver, the backup plan. And now that I'd cut the strings, they were flailing. My lawyer advised me not to respond. Instead, she drafted a reply declining mediation and reinforcing the boundaries we had already set. Your financial expectations are inappropriate and will not be entertained, she wrote. Any further pressure will be considered harassment. A week passed, then 2. Then the next holiday came, Christmas. I didn't go home. I stayed in my townhouse, curled on the couch with my favorite blanket, sipping wine and watching old movies. It was quiet, peaceful. My first Christmas not pretending to be someone else. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. We set a place for you. Still hoping you'd come. I stared at the screen, knowing exactly who it was from. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone and went to bed early. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way, and this one was locked for good. I woke up the next morning to another message, this one from Lauren. It simply read, "You think this is over?" It's not. Beneath it was a screenshot her announcing her own jewelry authentication business. She even copied part of my mission statement. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I'd seen knockoffs before, but this one was hilariously bad. Her business name was a cheap play on mine. The logo looked like it was made in Canva by someone half asleep. But the funniest part, she listed me as a former mentor. I never taught her a thing. Unless, of course, you count the lesson that silence is stronger than begging and independence is the loudest revenge. I couldn't stop laughing for days after Lauren's announcement. Her website was riddled with typos, stock photos of jewelry that weren't even vintage, and a services page offering free consultations for friends and family. She even used phrases like Emily-inspired dedication as if name-dropping me would legitimize her scam. But the worst part, some people actually believed her. I got emails from confused clients asking if we were expanding under new leadership. One collector even asked if Lauren was the visionary behind our New York office. That one nearly made Jenny throw her coffee. I had to issue a formal company statement clarifying that we were in no way affiliated with Authentic Gems by Lauren. The damage was mostly comical until she landed a client, a mid-tier estate firm I'd worked with before suddenly pulled a project. They said the family had gone in a different direction, but the timing was too precise to be coincidence. I did some digging, and of course, Lauren had underbid me by more than half. It would have been petty to care, except this was my reputation. Authenticity in my line of work is everything. And I had a feeling Lauren didn't even know how to tell a vintage clasp from a button. So I did what I always do when someone doubts me. I got to work. Jenny and I started gathering data. We requested records from the client who'd switched to Lauren, claiming we needed them for audit compliance. What we got back nearly made my jaw drop. Lauren had signed off on the authenticity of 2 pieces that were indisputably fake. One was a Victorian mourning brooch, except the alloy wasn't even invented until 1980. The other had a Cartier stamp that was misspelled. Jenny nearly choked on her tea when she saw it. She authenticated this, she asked. She's going to get someone sued. And that's exactly what happened. 3 weeks later, the estate lawyer called me panicked. The buyer had threatened legal action after learning one piece was worthless. He begged me to step in and fix the problem discreetly. I agreed on one condition. I wanted full documentation of everything Lauren had signed. He sent it over within the hour. When I read her report, I felt secondhand embarrassment. She called a 1920s brooch late Georgian and claimed it had high vibes and rustic charm. We fixed the issue for the buyer, who was relieved and offered to double my usual rate. The estate firm, ashamed, quietly resumed as sending us referrals. Lauren's name didn't appear in the industry again for months, but the damage to my family was far from over. My parents called again. This time they were gentler. No yelling, no guilt trips. Just a carefully worded voicemail. We'd love to sit down and reconnect. No expectations, just family. For a second, I hesitated. Maybe they had learned something. Maybe the silence had given them time to reflect. But then I remembered Christmas. I remembered the empty seat they claimed to save for me while still plotting how to access my bank account. I remembered Lauren's public tantrums and fake tears. I remembered how easily they'd turned on me once the truth didn't benefit them. So I didn't return the call. Instead, I focused on my business. My team had grown to 12 people across 3 cities. We had just landed a major international client, an old European family liquidating a private jewelry vault. The project was massive, requiring authentication for more than 600 pieces. It was exactly the kind of work I dreamed of back in my college dorm room. My name was being whispered in boardrooms and collector circles as the go-to expert. I wasn't just doing well, I was building something that would outlive me. And for once, I didn't need anyone to notice but me. Still, some nights I'd scroll through Lauren's page just to see what disaster she was causing. Most of it was cringy reels about girl bossing through generational trauma. She had pivoted into spiritual coaching and crystal cleansing, apparently now an intuitive gemologist. She even offered astrology-themed jewelry readings. It was entertaining until she posted a story claiming I had sabotaged her small business out of jealousy. She said she was healing from sister wounds and that some people can't stand to see you shine. Her comments were full of supporters calling me toxic and bitter. Jenny wanted to respond, but I stopped her. She can have her followers, I said. I'll take the Forbes clients. It wasn't about pride anymore. It was about peace, and mine had never been louder. Then one day, Grandma Janet called again. This time, her voice was different, soft, but hesitant. Emily, she said, I think you should know your parents are planning something. I sat up straight, my fingers tightening around the phone. She'd overheard them talking on the porch, something about accessing Emily's legacy and challenging the way she structured her assets. Grandma was furious, said she stormed out after hearing enough. They're working with someone, she added. Some advisor who thinks they can make a case. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Legally, they had no claim my company was privately held, and I'd structured everything airtight. But the idea that they were still plotting after all this time made my stomach churn. They hadn't learned anything. I called my lawyer and asked her to do a full review of all family-connected assets. Then I made a decision I'd been avoiding. I updated my will. Everything I had, every business, property, account was legally protected, and none of them would see a dime. That weekend, I went to visit Grandma Janet. We sat on her porch sipping lemonade the way we used to when I was a kid. She looked at me with watery eyes. I'm sorry they didn't see you, she said, but I always did. I reached over and held her hand. You're the reason I made it, I whispered. You're the reason I ever believed I was worth something. She smiled and wiped a tear. Before I left, she handed me a small velvet pouch. Your great-grandmother's locket, she said. She passed it to me when I moved out. I think it's time it finds a home with you. Inside was a simple gold pendant, delicate and timeless. As I clasped it around my neck, I felt something shift. This wasn't just jewelry. It was legacy, real legacy. Not stolen, not demanded, not faked, earned. The first letter arrived on a Monday morning, slipped beneath the office door in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. Inside was a formal notice. My parents had filed a petition for financial reconsideration based on familial obligation. My lawyer laughed when she read it, but I didn't. This wasn't about winning, it was about one last grasp at control. They claimed emotional damages, contributions toward upbringing, and even cited Lauren's career damage due to negative press. It was all absurd and legally baseless, but it still left a sour taste in my mouth. My own parents, reduced to scavengers of a life they never helped build. They weren't just trying to take my money, they were trying to rewrite my story. I held a staff meeting the next day. I told my team the truth that a very public lawsuit might be on the horizon. They rallied behind me without hesitation. Jenny even joked that we should print Unbreakable on the office mugs. The support gave me strength. I filed a countersuit immediately, not for damages, but for legal protections. My lawyers went full throttle, cease and desists, affidavits, restraining orders were needed. I didn't want vengeance, I wanted silence. Lauren retaliated, of course. She posted another tearful video about being silenced by toxic success and started a GoFundMe. The caption read, "Help me rebuild what my sister stole." Within hours, she'd raised $12.43 from 3 bots and 1 gullible ex-boyfriend. Meanwhile, I was busy finalizing our Paris office. Yes, Paris, years of quiet hustle, ignored wins, and private victories had finally brought me here. My name, once whispered as an afterthought, was now on the lips of collectors across continents. The day we opened, I wore Grandma's locket, not to show off, but to remind myself where I came from. My staff toasted champagne and I gave a small speech. This isn't about proving anyone wrong, I told them. It's about finally being allowed to be right. Back home, the lawsuit fizzled. Their case had no legs. The judge threw it out with a scolding about misuse of the legal system. But before they walked out of the courtroom, I looked them both in the eyes. I don't hate you, I said, and I meant it, but you will never guilt me again. My father turned red. My mother clutched her purse tighter. And Lauren didn't even look up from her phone. And just like that, it was over. No appeals, no follow-ups, just silence. And in that silence, I rebuilt everything they tried to tear down. I started a foundation, the Janet Initiative, named after my grandmother. It provides scholarships and mentorship to overlooked girls in underfunded communities who want to study art history or design. The first girl we funded sent me a handwritten letter that I keep framed in my home. "Thank you for seeing girls like me," she wrote. "I didn't think we mattered until someone like you told us we did." That letter meant more than every dollar I ever earned. It was proof that pain could become power. I stopped going to Sunday dinners a long time ago, but last month I bumped into Aunt Valerie at an antique fair. She looked older, softer, and maybe even a little embarrassed. "I always knew you were going to do something big," she said quietly. I thanked her and moved on. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need validation. I had something better: peace. Lauren, she rebranded again. Now she sells motivational journals on Etsy and calls herself a resilience coach. She still follows me on Instagram from a burner account, I can tell, but I don't block her. Let her watch. My parents moved out of their old house after the utilities got shut off. I guess $7,000 a month covered more than I thought. They live in a condo now, paid for by a reverse mortgage. Mom still posts passive-aggressive Bible verses and Dad leaves comments under Lauren's YouTube videos. They haven't tried to reach me since. No cards, no calls. No, "we're proud of you." And that's okay, because pride doesn't come from applause. It comes from surviving when no one claps. It comes from building something no one believed in. And it comes from realizing that you were never invisible. You were just surrounded by people too blind to see. I still wear that locket almost every day. Not because it's gold, but because it's real. It holds no secrets, just strength. Sometimes I wonder what that 8-year-old version of me, the one packed off to grandma's for sneezing, would think if she saw me now. I think she'd smile. Not because of the money, but because someone finally stayed. Not for approval, not for performance, but for herself. And that, more than anything, is the real inheritance. If there's one thing I've learned from this wild, painful, and unexpected journey, it's this: you don't owe anyone your success. Not the people who ignored you, not the ones who downplayed your worth, and certainly not those who only show up when they smell money. You owe it to yourself, to that younger version of you who sat alone wondering if you'd ever matter. I used to beg for validation, shrink myself to make others feel comfortable, and give until there was nothing left for me. But life taught me that some families aren't built from love, they're built from expectation, guilt, and obligation. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Success is not a debt. It's not a trophy to split among those who never lifted a finger to help you earn it. It's a mirror. And when I finally looked in that mirror and saw a woman who had built something powerful from absolutely nothing, I didn't see bitterness. I saw resilience. So to anyone out there who feels overlooked, underestimated, or listen to me, you're allowed to rise. You're allowed to succeed quietly. You're allowed to outgrow people who only loved you small. And if they call you selfish for protecting your peace, let them. Because the truth is, you don't become great by staying in places that shrink you. You become great by believing that you were worthy all along, even when no one else did. And when that day comes, the day you finally stand tall in your own story, trust me, it's worth every lonely night, every unanswered call, and every time you clapped for yourself. I know, because I lived it, and I wouldn't change a thing.